Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180 for the best in Saturday Talk Radio, and now for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI at 1 o'clock. Your host is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay. Clay, great show last week.
Pretty good, but I want to know what qualifies us as the best.
What qualifies us as the best?
Yeah.
Let's see, the caliber of the guests that we have, the conversation that we have, the fact that you and I can wax eloquently on the air.
Well, somebody asked me that. That's why I was throwing it out.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a good question. It's a valid question. We had Harley Pinson on last week.
I think that's why they asked it.
Why? Because we had Harley on. Boom. And Harley, I know you're listening. Have a good day. And we had Dr. Alveda King on, Martin Luther King's niece. She and I made some comments about Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, and the African American community. My suggestion to anybody, because I got a few calls on that, my suggestion to anybody who wants to know more about that subject, look it up on the computer. Margaret Sanger's Birth Control Review, the Negro Project, and see for yourself. You'd be very, very surprised.
And don't forget, Monday is Martin Luther King's birthday.
Yes, good segue there.
Big celebration here Monday morning.
Yes, community event. You want to talk about that?
No, you go ahead. You're in charge.
I'm in charge? Since when?
Since the first show.
There is an event, 8:30 on Monday at the Martin Luther King Community Center on Owen Street in Bakersfield. To find out more about it, call 661-324-7445, or the email is swccornerstone@aol.com. Next week, we have Dr. Walt Williams on the show. Who does he guest host for, Clay?
Some guy in another station.
Some guy, the initials RL?
Yes.
Yeah, RL. We'll leave it at that. And in the second half, we have the man who 20 years ago on the air explained to me what the prenumbers of the Constitution are. Regional Director of the Right to Life, Brian Johnson. But in the studio today for the hour, we have the consultant's consultant, the prognosticator's prognosticator, Mark and Cathy Abernathy.
Which
Mark,
one is the prognosticator?
Well, considering who Mark said was going to win the presidency, we can talk about which one's the prognosticator.
We'll get into that with him.
Yeah. Mark and Cathy Abernathy. Mark, Cathy, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here with you guys.
You know,
Thanks,
Cathy,
thanks,
Cathy's
Clay.
becoming very popular. I see her on TV. I hear her on the radio. She gets around. Gets up to you worked with Bill Thomas years ago.
Sure.
You
well,
get
anyone
back-
that'll let me talk, I'm willing to be there. Mark gets a dose of it every night, and he's had enough. So I think he's farming me out.
I see.
Yes.
I'm not sure I've heard all she has to say yet. So there's probably still more to come after 30 years, is it?
Is that all?
Have you guys been married 30 years?
Is it?
81 to whatever, yeah.
Well, you had to be a child.
Hard to believe we stuck this. I stuck this thing out. But I did.
No, it's hard to believe I haven't heard all you have to say yet.
Well, Cathy, you definitely had to be a child bride.
I was.
Yes.
Very, very young. Very, very young.
Was that the right thing to say?
Yeah, very nice of you. Now, I just want to, before we get into the politics and stuff, I want to just get a little history on Mark and Cathy. Cathy, you graduated from UCLA, I understand.
Right. That was after, though, growing up in Coachella Valley, Indio, where I had a great childhood growing up in a farming community and small town where people watch out for each other and take care of each other. And then I went to UCLA, and I grew up with no even knowledge of ethnic or racial discrimination. And then I go to UCLA, and man, they all are taking sides in there. There's the Asians and the blacks and the Jewish, and everybody's separate. And it was stunning to me because the difference in the so-called elite world of the college and university, where that becomes paramount, and growing up small town America where it's not that way.
In India, where her high school team was the Rajas.
Right.
Well, at UCLA, I think we had you on once before. We talked about that a little bit. You had an interesting professor that you,
Yeah.
I guess you got into a debate with. You want to tell us quickly about
Well,
that?
I thought I'd be a political science major. I got interested in it that year, but I signed up for my poli-sci class, and my teacher is Angela Davis, an avowed communist still to this day. I sit in the room each day, and all she does is, we're not going to lecture today about poli-sci. We're going to talk about the Vietnam War and how bad America is being in it, and by day 3, I just stood up and said, I come here once in my life to get an education. I'm not going to listen to you on this war. And I turned around and marched out. I thought I'd have a crowd behind me. I turned around to look. I was the only one. But, I'm glad I did. I ended up majoring in speech communication, got to study Winston Churchill, read all his speeches, study the history behind it all. I just really enjoyed that. But, that's what I say. Public universities take tax dollars, hire communists. That set me off for I guess for the rest of my life.
So does the Democratic Party.
Well, they do too.
And Mark Abernathy, you went to school where?
Western Illinois University, just up the road from the little farm where I grew up.
You're a farmer.
Yeah, I still am. We still own the farm there, still operate the farm there in West Central Illinois.
And your major?
Agriculture.
And now you're in politics.
Well, some people think I am, and some people think I'm
still
not.
shoveling the same stuff.
Shoveling the same stuff.
I like that. You should be a Democrat. Like that Wasserman lady.
Oh, is she a piece of work?
Well, that's where your RL host calls her Debbie Blabbermouth.
Yes,
Schultz.
Yes. Yep.
And then you went from there. You mentioned when we talked privately that you went on to Florida to get.
I went to graduate school at the University of Florida. And studying genetics. I was going to find the cure for cancer. That was going to be my thing. But then that was during Vietnam, and I got drafted then during that time, and so I just called up my Air Force recruiter, and he came over, signed me up, and so I went to the Air Force, went to officer school at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. That was a lot of fun down there, and we got to, on the weekend, go up to Austin, beautiful town. Yeah. And then I went to technical school at Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, and I learned electronics and all the electronics in the aircraft, and became an avionics airborne electronics officer.
Mark and
then I went to South Carolina, and I was in a tactical squadron there, and I said I got 4 years in the Air Force. I want to do something. So I had been told I want to go to Europe, Germany, somewhere like that, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I changed my little sheet you give them, and I said anywhere. And in 2 weeks I had orders to Vietnam. So I went there and spent 13 months over there, and came back. And that's how I got to California, because I was stationed in Sacramento there the last year that I was in the service. And then I got involved in politics in Sacramento, as people are likely to do.
Mark and Cathy Abernathy are visiting with us in studio.
Well, I guess we had a little similar experience. I was drafted also and ended up going to Fort Benning, Georgia for candidate school.
Yeah.
But I was an information officer, so fortunately I didn't get to Vietnam, although I was on orders several times.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was in the Marines and was sitting in Camp Pendleton, and they came over and said, "Would you like to go to officer candidate school?" And I declined, which was not the wisest of moves. But yeah.
And Cathy, you were a nurse, right? You've been taking care of
No,
Mark.
I was going to say, while you guys were all out fighting for your country, I was at a taxpayer publicly funded institution being taught by communists. So that's what was going on for me.
So that's what we were fighting for.
We were fighting to make sure the communists could have their way.
Right.
Yes. Truth, justice, and the American way. So, Clay, can we now talk about politics a little bit?
I think so. I think, well, we haven't really justified what makes Mark and Cathy experts in politics. And now, Cathy, you worked with Bill Thomas. Give us a little history of your business.
Well, I went from college to the state capitol. I had first been a college intern for Jerry Ford when he was Republican leader of the House. I loved it. Then I came home and worked on a congressional campaign the next summer down in the desert in Indio, and Congressman Mr. Vesey won Congress. So the next year I went to intern for him. Then I went to Sacramento, worked in the state capitol, where I was head of the Nixonettes in a campaign camp, which I won't go into what those outfits were about, but I was in charge of that, and met Mark and the Young Republicans at that time. And then Bill Thomas was elected to the Assembly. I helped with his campaign, and then he hired me. And then the congressman here, Bill Ketchum, just dropped dead on a tennis court in 1978. And so then I ran Bill Thomas' campaign for Congress and stayed with him for 20-some years.
Wow. Wow.
But now you work with.
And now I'm working with Shannon Grove and also in political activities with Mark. And in between working for Thomas, I've started my own public relations, legislative consulting in Washington, D.C. and Sacramento. So
You do a lot of traveling too, then.
yeah, I do.
Wow.
Good amount.
And Mark, you talked a little bit about your history, but I think we're going to be taking a break in a second. When we come back, I think we're going to talk about some politics.
Sure.
Great.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.